there's a Navy base right on the Georgia-Florida border that houses some sensitive material, so I won't go into that. I get called into my platoon commander's office, and he told me, okay, well, we've had reports of animal being super aggressive over by this lake. It's called Lake D. It's a lake that's on base there. And so basically I need you to go destroy this, I need you to go kill this animal. Didn't know what it was. I thought maybe a bobcat, maybe a mountain lion, something like that. As I leave the captain's office, Gunny pulls me aside and says, hey, it's a chimp or some shit. I see this large, I'm 6'6", and this thing was considerably bigger than me from my perspective. It was about 40 yards away. Start walking across the road there. Well, I know that I'm there to, like Gunny said, shoot a chimp or some shit. This looked very much like what I was sent there to shoot.
It looked like somebody was bent over and had their head in the window of the deer blind. It either heard me or smelt me, and he pulled his head out of the tent and stood straight up, and that shocked me. They don't make people that big.
The way it moved, almost as if it was gliding across the beach. I've never seen anything move like that in my life. They were screaming at each other in gibberish. It sounded like a language, and they were chuntering away back and forwards, back and forwards, back and forwards. I know what a bear looks like, and there is no way on this planet that what I saw were bears.
What are you reporting?
Jesus Christ, you better...
Sir?
Gia!
Hello?
Get somebody out here.
What's going on now, sir?
That son of a bitch is about 6'9", I don't know.
Do you see him now, sir?
Yes, I'm looking right at him.
Uh-oh.
Hi, this is Carol King from Music City, and you're listening to Sasquatch Chronicles.
Merry Christmas, everyone. Thanks so much for being here tonight. Got a great show planned for you. We're going to be chatting with John. And about 20 years ago, John was on a military base in Georgia, and he was sent out to kill this animal. You heard it there before the intro of the show, John talking about the experience. And I'll let John kind of go into it tonight. If you've had an encounter and you'd like to be on the show, shoot me an email. My email address is wes@sasquatchchronicles.com. And if you get a chance to check out sasquatchchronicles.com, you can become a member and get additional shows. We're redoing the intro of the show. And so if you're a listener out there and you want to send me a clip, I'll plug it into the show. I know some people have sent me clips, and I haven't had a chance to kind of redo the intro. But I plan on doing that between Christmas and New Year's. So if you want to record yourself and send it to me, I'll plug it in the intro. Let's jump into it tonight. I want to welcome John to the show. John, thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Wes.
And thank you so much for your service to the country, John. This happened to you, what, about 20 years ago?
Yeah, it was 2001.
Well, if you would just kind of start from the very beginning, what were you doing and walk us into what happened?
There's a Navy base right on the Georgia-Florida border that houses some sensitive material, so I won't go into that. But I was in the Marine Corps, and my job, I was part of a CQB team, close quarter battle team. I was specifically a DM, a designated marksman. We would go down to an area that houses the sensitive material for 4 days and come out for 4 days. Essentially, there were 3 teams of us, 3 different platoons, and 3 CQB teams. I was on CQB team 3. I was their DM, and just came off of a 4 days off in '96, and we're about to go back down to this area where they house sensitive materials, and our job was to protect it. I get called into my platoon commander's office, and my platoon commander, he was a Mustang. He was a enlisted guy that went officer. Really, really good man. He called me in, and I guess the notable difference between a DM and your standard or regular CQB Marine or Marine, we didn't carry the normal 5.56. We didn't carry the AR platform. We carried a 308. It's an M40A3 is what it is. It's a 308 bolt action that's scoped. Really, our job was to, and it sounds stupid, but if you understood the job, it maybe doesn't sound so stupid. But the bulk of our job was to shoot out light bulbs at a very basic level. These magazines had lights on the outside. We were urban snipers, but we trained, at 100, 150 yards. We didn't do that real long range stuff. So I get called into my captain's office, and he asked me. Well, he doesn't ask me. He asked me if I had a tree stand. He knew that I was a pretty avid hunter. And down there in southern Georgia, everybody hunts in tree stands. It's real thick, foresty areas. So I said, yeah, I do. And he told me, okay, well, we've had reports of animal being super aggressive over by this lake. It's called Lake D. It's a lake that's on base there. And so basically I need you to go destroy this, I need you to go kill this animal. Didn't know what it was. I thought maybe a bobcat, maybe a mountain lion, something like that. Well, my platoon sergeant, he was a gunnery sergeant. As I leave the captain's office, Gunny pulls me aside and says, "Hey, are we allowed to cuss on your show, Wes, or is that?"
Yeah, you can, John. The only thing I bleep out is the F word, but go ahead.
Just to keep it in context, just because there's a few things that Gunny said that kind of make sense, but he said it's a chimp or some shit. So me being a good Lance Corporal, being a Marine, I didn't ask any questions. I just got my gear. He told me to run home and get my hooch, because I didn't need that, my tent, and get some more of my gear, and then come meet him, and he would bring me to Lake D, which is what happened. So I get to Lake D, which is about 400 yards from the sensitive area. I get down there, and it's very wooded. There's an asphalt path around about half of it, and I had fished Lake D several times, so really good bass fishing there. So I knew where there was a pretty prominent game trail, and I thought that was probably the best place to set up, because I'm shooting blind. I mean, it's a pretty good sized lake. It's not huge. It's probably, I'm going to tell you, probably a 4 or 5 acre lake. It's not enormous by any stretch of the imagination, but I didn't know where to go or where to look or anything else. People camp all over the place there. So I set up in this little stand of woods, set my camp up there. I was about 40 yards from the shoreline of Lake D. Lake D was directly to my east. To my west, there was an electrical station, had a bunch of transformers and stuff, had a fence going all the way around it. And of course, the base itself had a fence going all the way around it. So I set up my camp, and everything. Got there about 9 o'clock in the morning. set up my camp and everything and got ready for the evening. Got my tree up in a tree stand. I noticed that there were two campers on the shore of Lake D, probably 150, 200 yards from where I was. And so I wanted to get my tree stand pretty high in the tree, just so I could, if I got a shot, I could use the ground or the water as a backdrop, and I wouldn't risk, an errant round flying in and hitting somebody. The tree that I was in originally, I'll call it tree number one. That tree, it had branches starting at about 6-7 feet up the tree, and I wanted to be higher than that. So I took my tree stand, I went up the tree, and it was, it was getting pretty close to not having any shooting light. This was in the summer, it was in May. So I'm going to tell you, it was probably close to 8:00 in the evening. I had my headlamp on, and I heard something hit the water. Big splash, like when you throw a big boulder or something in the water, how it's like a void and a big splash. So I started looking over that direction. I was up in my tree stand. I started looking over in that direction and saw it, the top of a tree over there just swinging back and forth. And these are pretty old growth trees. I mean, they're pretty substantial. Couldn't see anything. It was, like I said, heavily wooded. You couldn't see a darn thing. And then I saw a big old log, like a big old branch, come flying out of the forest there and hit the water. So I sat there, it quieted down. You could hear the people that were camping over there on the side talking about the splash in the water. They thought it was a fish. You could hear them clear as day because there's no traffic really. I mean, there's no highway there or anything else. So I sat up on my tree stand for a while and came down. I was pretty excited to have this duty. I'm an outdoor enthusiast, and so I brought my fishing pole and my tackle box and stuff with me. So I came down from the tree. I didn't have shooting light anymore. Went over to Lake D and fished just for a little bit, and with intentions of getting up the next morning and getting in my tree stand. So I got up about 4:30, 4:45 the next morning, just before shooting light. Got up in my tree stand and was sitting there till probably sometime around 7:30, 8:00 in the morning. Came down. Animals aren't necessarily, especially in the heat of Georgia in the south. I mean, it's swampy. What I forgot to mention was that directly to the east of where I was runs into swampland all the way to the coast. There's a big finger there, a big inlet, and it's swamp all the way through. Ofofanoki runs pretty close to there, and it all looks very much like that. So I came down from my tree stand, and I thought I'd wander over and look at where this tree was shaking just to see what the heck was going on. Went over there, and I found a smaller game trail there, but you could tell it was heavily used, beat down pretty good. And so I thought, well, that's where that's where the action was last night around 5, 6 o'clock. So I'm going to set up over there, leave my camp where it is, and set my tree stand over there on this other game trail, see if I see anything. So went back to my campsite, ate a little bit, rested up for the day. Didn't really have a whole lot to do. My captain told me not to bother coming back or calling or anything until I shot this thing. So I just basically hung around. My gunny told me that as soon as I shot this thing to call him directly. I had a cell phone. Our gunny was a bachelor. He lived in the barracks still, which were 2.5, 3 miles from Lake D. It wasn't very far. So I went back over to the tree, this other tree that I found, tree 2, that was by this other game trail, and cut a few branches off and got my tree stand up nice and high there. As I was working on it, this Navy military policeman is driving by and obviously wondering what the hell I'm doing out there in camouflage and armed and everything else. So he stopped and started talking to me. I kind of told him what the reports were and why I was there, and he said he had heard the same thing. And he decided to go kick these campers out. It was a weekday, so the traffic was pretty light around Lake D anyway. So he was going to go kick these campers out, and there were two main gates coming into Lake D, so he was going to chain both of those closed. So he went and did all that while I was getting my tree stand set up. I got my tree stand set up. The campers aren't there anymore, so I'm not entirely worried about the backdrop, except for that the limited area, the sensitive area is about 400 yards away, and the M40A3 is about a 1,000-yard rifle, so you worry about it with a 308 round. You worry about it flying, getting out of hand. You always know your target and what's beyond. That's something they instill in you. So I get my tree stand up, and I'm sitting up there minding my own business, waiting to see if anything came by. Like I said, I was an avid hunter, so I had some doe urine, and I had that on me just to kind of help mask the scent. I stunk to high heaven anyway because I had been out there. This is now day number 2 in May in the South Georgia heat. So I'm sitting up on my tree stand, and I hear something banging, a banging sound on this chain link fence that went around this electrical station where the transformers were. I just hear banging on this, and I, thinking to myself, maybe it's maintenance guy, maybe he's got a key, or who the heck knows. I didn't. It was to my 6. It was to my back. The electrical station was, and there was a lot of trees between me and that. So you couldn't really turn around and look anyway. I mean, all you're seeing is treetops. So I sat there. This banging went on, and then it stopped. It was probably 6 or 7 bangs on this fence, and it stopped. And I sat there, and probably 10 minutes went by, and where that asphalt road goes around that side of Lake D, right by tree number 1 where I was at the first time, I see this large, I'm 6'6", and this thing was considerably bigger than me from my perspective. It was about 40 yards away. Start walking across the road there. Well, I know that I'm there to, like Gunny said, shoot a chimp or some shit. This looked very much like what I was sent there to shoot. So I brought the rifle, shouldered my rifle, and waited for a good shot. It got across the road and knelt down on its right knee, as if to pick something up. I don't know what it was doing. I didn't really give it a chance, because as soon as it stopped and went to kneel down, I took my first shot, hit it right behind the left shoulder. When I hit it behind the left shoulder, its left leg that was up in kind of a crouching position, it lunged forward onto its left hand, and it let out, it wasn't a scream at all. It was more of like a really deep moan. I must have taken it in the lung, and it was almost like a rattle. I've heard it before when I've shot deer at pretty close range. They make a similar, but it wasn't as deep. This was way deeper than any of that. Racked another round into my rifle and took a second shot, which hit him on the left side behind his left ear in the head. He went face down at that point. I sat there for a minute, and I got my cell phone out and powered it on, and I called Gunny, and he asked me exactly where I was, and he told me not to move a muscle, to stay right there. So me being a Lance Corporal and being a good Marine, I stayed right there. Wasn't, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 minutes later, I hear Humvees coming up the road. They stop, and again, it's probably 200 yards to the gate, to the main gate to Lake D from where I was. But like I said, you can hear everything, relatively clear. You can't make out exact verbiage, but you can hear Gunny out there cussing and yelling because the gate wasn't supposed to be locked. They got through the gate somehow, and the first Humvee came up, and the platoon commander, my captain, and Gunny were in the first Humvee. Gunny hopped out. I came down the tree, and I was standing next to the road when they pulled up, and Gunny hopped out and told me, "Great job." The platoon commander walked over next to this thing and was standing there. And by now it's dark. There's a Humvee down the road about 150 yards that blocked the road off coming into Lake D there. And then a Humvee just whizzed past us like heading to the LA. I don't know if they were blocking off another entrance or what they were doing. But Gunny told me good job and told me we need to go get my stuff and I need to go back with him for a debriefing. We were walking over to tree number 1 to get all my gear, and I had my headlamp on. And so when we were walking by, I looked to the left where the captain and this thing, the body was, which is very obvious when the headlamp turns. Gunny grabbed me by my shoulder and said, "Eyes forward." We walked over. I packed my stuff up, which wasn't a whole lot, packed whatever I had up. While I was packing up, some people in a white car showed up. The way that the captain addressed them and was talking to them, I have to believe that they were people of significance. I don't know if they were NCIS or who the heck they were. Captain was talking to them. Gunny, I got all my stuff together. Gunny I had my rifle slung, and Gunny was holding kind of me by my right arm, kind of hurrying me through this process and marching me back to the Humvee. As I was walking back, one of the guys that was there with the captain just looked at me and he said, "Nice shooting, Tex." And me and Gunny got in the Hummer, went back to Gunny's office, had a bottle of water, and Gunny made me retell the story step by step twice. It was recorded. He told me that I'd have to sign a statement. And I said, "Yeah, no problem. Whatever, you don't ask any questions. You just do what they tell you." So a couple weeks went by, and I never did get a statement or anything. Gunny told me forget about the whole thing. And when I brought it up to him again, I said, "Hey, I never signed a statement or anything, Guns. I don't know what you want me to do." He said, "I told you to forget about that, not to worry about it." And so I didn't hear anything else about it. Well, I did hear one of the guys that pulled up in the white car. He was talking to the captain and the other guy, and I overheard him because we were from where tree 1 was to where the body was only maybe 20 yards, maybe. I did hear him say, "We're going to need a backhoe to pick this thing up or to lift this something along those lines." But I don't know what they ever did with the body. I went fishing again there with a civilian buddy of mine, probably not even a week later, and we pulled off over there so I could see if my tree stand was still there because I never grabbed my tree stand. It wasn't there anymore. I don't know if somebody stole it or if they took it or what, but that's pretty much the long and short of it, Wes.
I want to ask you, did you ever get any more information about this animal? I mean, were people in the military that were on the base or around the base, were they being hurt?
Nobody ever told me. They just said that it was being aggressive towards campers. And a lot of people would camp around Lake D, and I don't know if aggressive it was attacking anybody. I didn't hear anything with the exception of my orders were to go find an animal that was aggressive somewhere around Lake D. I got extremely, extremely lucky. And, the opposite side of Lake D is very, very wooded. The side that I was on was, there were some pretty clear areas there down to the water. And those game trails were the only reason I was on that side of the lake. And the swamp was right there to our back, too. I'm figuring if any animals are coming around there, especially aggressive animals that aren't used to human contact, they'd probably be coming from the swamp side. So I got extra. I could have been out there for days, and I was specifically told not to come back until I killed it.
Yeah, that's a crazy account, man. I never served, so forgive some of my questions. I'm assuming in the military, they give you what you need to know and go do it. They're not gonna sit you down and like read you a book. I mean, they're gonna. That's my impression anyway. But did they give you any more information beyond a chimp, or go find this primate?
Gunny told me, he said it was a chimp or some shit. And then when he was driving me out to Lake D, he gave me a brief. He said, you're basically looking for a monkey. You're basically looking for a tall, a monkey, a chimp, a chimpanzee. And I thought maybe it was something that escaped from the Jacksonville Zoo or something. I had no idea.
Yeah, and when you took the shot, you said you're what, about 40 yards?
Yeah. Yeah, 40, 45 yards away.
If you would, can you kind of describe what you saw?
Like I said, I mean, I'm 6'6", and this thing was, at least, I'm going to tell you, 6 inches to a foot taller than me, crossing the road. The road was a single track road that security MPs would use to drive around Lake D. There was a boat ramp on the south side of Lake D that a double track road came into, but this was just a single track paved road. This thing stepped. It stepped probably, I'm going to tell you, 3 feet before the edge of the single track road. It still stepped on the asphalt itself, but it almost cleared that single track road plus that 3 feet in just a normal step. It wasn't in a hurry. It wasn't running, wasn't scared or skittish or anything else. It was starting to get dark at that time, but from the illumination that I had, which it was still shooting light. I mean, you could still make out everything and see everything like a brick. It looked to me, and maybe it was just a little darker, the hair, just because of the time of night it was, or the evening, but it looked like a brick red color, real long hair. When we walked by it initially, you could smell it, but everything in South Georgia stinks. It all smells like a swamp, but this was like a concentrated swamp smell. I mean, it smelled pretty terrible. So you could catch a little whiff of it. It had its hands when it was walking, and it had kind of a stride. It was moving its arms. Its hands its fingertips were down by its knees, and it was just striding across there. And then it stopped it looked like to me, maybe picked something up. It went down to one knee for some reason. And when it went down to one knee is when I took the first shot, and it lurched forward on its hand. And then I took the second shot and dropped it.
Yeah, that's insane to send you out there. It makes me wonder, maybe the guys up top didn't realize what it was until after you shot it.
Yeah, I don't think Gunny really did. I think Gunny knew that it was something to kind of, hush hush, like probably shouldn't put it in the paper or anything. The captain definitely knew, to be quiet about it, and who NCIS or whoever those 2 guys in the white car were, they definitely, they didn't let anybody else in there, West, while I was getting my stuff, and they had the Humvee blocking the road, as a matter of fact. And so I don't think they really thought that, I don't know that they really thought that I was even going to find anything. I mean, hindsight being 2020, and me being much older today, and having, back then I thought I was 10 foot tall and bulletproof, as most Marines do. I mean, think hindsight being 2020, I wouldn't think that you would just send, if you thought that that's what it was, you wouldn't send one guy with a tree stand and a 308 out there. And like I said, I just got real lucky. I mean, I just got lucky that on the second night it happened to walk 40 yards from me.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. I think if you would have shot and missed, I think you would have been in big trouble. Makes me wonder if you got the aggressive one. You know, I don't think they run around alone. After you shot this thing, what did you think it was?
Well, I shot it, and I honestly thought it was a monkey or something. I shot it the second time when it finally fell on its face and it was just there dead. It was motionless at that point. I know at that point when after I got my phone out, I called Gunny and he told me to stay right there. So I sat there. I was thinking about it and I was like, yeah, this is 100% a Sasquatch. I mean, I've been to the zoo. I've seen chimps. They're not anywhere near the size of this guy. I mean, they're not even a quarter the size of this guy. And he was, beefy, big, broad-shouldered, and walking as natural on two legs. I mean, no hurry, no nothing, like he owned the place. And so I knew, once I sat there and thought about it, sitting in my tree stand, I wasn't a Sasquatch enthusiast or anything, but, growing up in the Rockies, you hear about them. And so I thought, well, shoot, this is probably definitely a Bigfoot. So I climbed down from my tree stand. I just waited for Gunny. And I stood right there. I didn't go over and poke at it or anything. Of course, it was, by that time, we were at a shooting light then. But by the time Gunny got there and the headlights, they had it pretty well illuminated. The captain pulled the Humvee right up and had the lights right on it. So.
Yeah, a lot of people might ask when you run over and check out the body. And, I guess coming from being a former hunter, I can tell you, that's a great way to get hurt or even killed. An injured animal will kill you quicker than a healthy animal. And that's why a lot of hunters wait for them to bleed out before they approach. But, for someone who's not a hunter, maybe never served in the military, why didn't you walk over and check it out?
A little bit of that. I've been hunting my whole life. So there was some of that. My grandpa always taught me, we'd shoot a deer and, or an elk or whatever, and it would fall. And then you'd sit there. And a lot of times, we'd sit there and have a cup of coffee. And, it was seriously 10 minutes before Gunny got there. So it was a little bit of that, but it was a lot of me being a Lance Corporal and a Gunny and a captain who don't show a lot of interest in Lance Corporals, I think. And Gunny, I mean, you didn't mess with this guy. He was a hardened Marine. And so he told me to stay right there. And I did. I just did what I was told. I stayed right there. Not that I don't think he would have known any different if I would have walked over there and looked at it, but I just did what I was told. I stayed right there and didn't move a muscle. And then when he got there, we walked within, I'm going to tell you, 5 to 7 yards of it, walking over to get my gear. And that's when I turned my head to kind of look at it. Mostly I wanted to see shot placement. I mean, because that's what we look for. I knew where I hit it. I knew where I was aiming, and my 308 was dead nuts. So I had no doubts in my mind. But walking by and turning my head, and then Gunny telling me eyes forward, that kind of confirmed it for me, that it was something that maybe you weren't necessarily supposed to see, or maybe you weren't necessarily supposed to. He certainly didn't want me over there messing with it. And when those guys in the white car showed up, they weren't uber secretive, but they looked military, but they weren't dressed in any military uniforms. So I don't know if they're NCIS or who they were.
Yeah, it's probably better that you didn't, John. And, you know, I've talked to so many soldiers, and I've had a lot of veterans on the show where they've had run-ins with these things on these military bases. Fort Lewis is a great example. And, you know, they're out there doing these training exercises, and, you know, where one team is a good team, one team's the bad guys, and you guys are shooting blanks at each other. And I've talked to a lot of soldiers that are like, they'll run into these things and go, you know, what am I going to do? I have blanks. I basically can make a bunch of noise, and that's about it.
Yeah, I could see how, especially if you were at ground level and you weren't armed, if all you had was blanks. And I mean, that thing, after the fact, and sitting there after I called, sitting there, I mean, you could see how intimidating this thing would be if you were anywhere on ground level, face to face with this thing and not armed. I mean, I didn't have any second thoughts. I mean, I shot with my 308. It did the damage it was supposed to do, especially at 40 yards. But I don't know that if I was at ground level and, you know, it was any closer or it knew that I was there, that I would have even taken that shot. Just because I mean, it was really big. And I've heard stories of, you know, guys getting shot with a 308 in their ball rounds. You know, these aren't hollow points. They don't mushroom worth of crap. They're just ball rounds. And so I don't know that I would have taken that. I don't know that it would have taken it down at a different angle, or I just got super lucky. I was super lucky in my placement, where my location, shot placement was perfect. Couldn't ask for really better shot placement, except for that if I could have, you know, dropped them in one shot instead of two, that would have been, I guess, ideal. But, you know, you aim small, miss small. I certainly didn't want to aim for his head, but like I've heard on your show before, he wasn't bobbing up and down. You know, you shoot at man-sized targets at 500 yards, and purposefully they'll move the target as if it were bobbing up and down. And so you time it so that you make that shot. But he wasn't moving up and down at all. It was very smooth.
You know, everyone's kind of heard of Bigfoot or Sasquatch, but when you see one in person, it's a whole different ballgame. And here you are, you know, you've put a bullet in this thing. And I want to ask you, did it affect you at all?
I don't think so. To me, it was just, I mean, it was just the job I had at the time. I mean, it's what I was supposed to do. I guess it affected me in that I know that they exist. I know, as a matter of fact, that they're real. I know because I killed one, and I got within 5 yards of it walking over to get my stuff. So I know that I know that they exist and that they're real. I don't know why there's not maybe more information on them. I don't know why. I don't know why it's secretive. If that would have been a bear, if that was a black bear or anything else, these guys in the white car wouldn't show up. I mean, no, they might send you out there. They might say, "Hey, there's a bear that's acting super aggressive out here," and go shoot it. When I was a police officer, we had a bear in the little town that I was a police officer in, and they had me go out and shoot this bear because it was being aggressive. Me and a game warden went out there, and, you know, we were on both sides of the river, and I ended up shooting this bear, and it wasn't treated the same way. And so I guess I don't understand, maybe except for that maybe it skews some sort of theological belief or something. Maybe that's why it's secret. I don't know why it's secretive, bud. I really can't tell you.
Yeah, I figured as much, John. I do believe that there is a cover-up going on. There's way too many encounters on these military bases for the government not to notice. I've talked to too many soldiers, especially at Fort Lewis, where, maybe someone got hurt during training. They had a run-in with one of these things, and they had to go report to an Air Force guy, which is weird. I mean, I never served, so maybe I'm talking out of line, but, if I'm in the Army, why do I have to go report to an Air Force guy? The military branches generally don't get along anyway from an outsider's point of view. Why would I have to go report to an Air Force guy? It's strange. After having this encounter, and I ask everyone on the show, John, what do you think Sasquatch is? But after this encounter, what do you think Sasquatch is? What's kind of your opinion? And there's no wrong answer, of course.
I can undoubtedly tell you at least the one that I encountered was flesh and blood mammal. It fell just like any other animal would fall. It behaved when it was shot like any other animal would, or man, or anything. I mean, it's completely, and I've heard that on your show before, Wes, about, orbs and all that other. I didn't get any of that, and I'm glad I was ignorant, I guess, at the time, just because like I said, if I would have known then what I know now, I probably wouldn't be out there doing that. But yeah, I mean, it's just flesh and blood. You could hear after that first shot, you could hear the kind of, I don't know what to call the noise that it made was very pneumatic. It was air leaving its body, basically. I know that I took at least one lung out and probably his heart. And then when it fell forward, that was just, I probably would have died without that second shot, to be honest with you. Maybe, I don't know. But I had re-racked my gun, my rifle so quickly that you're just trained to do that. You fire around, you re-rack real quick. And I had already done that. And, I just took the second shot, which definitely dropped it. But I would say, beyond a shadow of a doubt, flesh and blood, mammal.
Yeah, and I respect your answer, John. We can only go off of our own experience with these things, and it's hard to really tell what they are. But I respect your answer for sure. If you had the chance, would you want to see another one?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think so. Where I live now, there's a lot of sightings just in this area, and I mean, I can't say yeah, because again, if I was at ground level with the thing, I probably, and being older and fatter and slower now, I don't know how I would react. Back then, I was too dumb to know any better. I would like to see one just to show. I would like to get evidence of one. I'd like to get, like, honest to goodness, not the Patty film is very compelling, but it still leaves room for debate. I mean, I think if you could get some real evidence and provide real evidence to skeptical people, I think then there would be, more of a they're obviously endangered, whatever it is. There's not enough of them out there, but there might be more of a push to try to, help save, do whatever. Maybe, like I said, I think they're just a flesh and blood creature, flesh and blood mammal. And so that being the case, I would like to get evidence of one. I don't know that I necessarily want to see one up close.
Yeah, I understand. It makes you wonder, though, why it's being covered up. There is, and this is my opinion, of course, I think that who's ever running the show, they don't really care about encounters. They don't really care about what you talked about, what you saw. They don't really care. I think what they care about is if the only time someone's going to show up is if A, one gets shot and there's evidence, or B, someone gets hurt. And the way they tend to handle people, the public, is pretty harsh. I mean, it's very threatening, very, you didn't see that, you saw a bear, that sort of thing. And it makes me wonder why it's being covered up. The only thing I can go back to is what it is, and that's why they're covering it up.
There certainly wasn't enough time to like fly in some, covert people. I mean, these guys, with the sensitive material that was there on that base, NCIS had a big, and I only keep saying that because we had an incident prior to this incident where some people blew the gate, and NCIS got involved, and they were driving the same same white Ford Taurus. So that's why I got to believe it was them. It was somebody that was those guys got there. I mean, quick, not as quick as Gunny and the captain, but pretty damn quick. I mean, within minutes of Gunny and Captain getting there, those guys were there. So they have to be guys that were, working on the base or were on the base or something like that. I mean, but it's very hush hush, and I never signed a statement. I never had to. I mean, it was just never talked about again. It was never talked about.
Yeah. And that's the part that is definitely frustrating for sure. I really appreciate you taking the time to come on and share this encounter. And, two of the eyewitnesses that are probably my favorite to speak to are former military, and hunters. Definitely hands down. So I really appreciate you taking the time to come forward and share this encounter that happened to you over 20 years ago. Can I ask you one last question? Being that I never served, I never took the opportunity to serve our country, and I highly admire people who did. Can I ask you, what was your best moments of serving?
The camaraderie. I have a friend, my best friend from then. He and I have spent, since we met. I mean, we grew up together since we met in the Marine Corps. He actually works for me now, and he's married, and his kids are my kids, and my kids are his kids. And I have friends all over the United States that I served with that, when I got out, I got into police work, specifically hoping that I would find the same sort of camaraderie, but you don't. I think you make friends in those scenarios, in those situations that are lifelong friends. They're not buddies when things are good. They're friends all the time. And their parents, I lost a few friends over in Iraq, and I'm still in touch with their parents and their siblings. And, it's a bond that I had never felt before or since with some of those guys that I worked with. And I won't get teared up about it, but yeah, it's that's to me. And I never had any intentions of joining the military. I don't come from a military family. I was a football player and pretty much got dared to join the military by a girl that I was dating, and her dad was a Marine. And so I said, you know what, I can do that. And so I did. I was shipping off to boot camp 2 weeks later. My mom was ready to break my legs.
Yeah, I think that's the answer most people give, that brotherhood, that you're in situations, that you're relying on each other. And I could see how you could build lifelong friendships with it. And I admire that a lot. And I really appreciate you taking the time to come on and share it. And thank you for your service, and Merry Christmas to you, John.
Hey, you too, man. I hope you have a great one.
And that's it for tonight, everyone. Remember, if you've had an encounter, shoot me an email. My email address is wes@sasquatchchronicles.com. And if you get a chance, check out sasquatchchronicles.com. You can become a member and get additional additional shows. Until next time, everyone.
When the level's still low when you want it bad, the lights on. With nose in the hand, dark in the heart, the lights on. My wheels unturned to go alone, the lights on. Baby, you should know that I'm gone. With the lights on, this is my home, place where I own. Memories of you, dear, until your eyes close at the sky. I'm mesmerized. Memories of you, dear. I saw moon as a human and writer. The lights on, and its power grew wider. The lights on, so I put my speed a little wiser. Something quieter.